Welcome to our next episode of EnneaQuest. Good afternoon, good evening to you, Saffron. How are you today?
Good evening, Michelle. I am well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. I'm good. Our theme this month in the Wisdom Seekers is all about being heard. And we were just chatting. I was having a look at your wonderful Instagram post this morning. I'm going to just pop your Instagram link on there. Saffron Baggallay on Instagram is wonderful. There's always amazing tips on kind of looking at the Enneagram from different angles. And this morning's one was communication styles, which falls in very nicely with our theme.
Which just shows again how connected we all are. Hey, Michelle.
Exactly, exactly. It's all about connection. Well, for the four, it is. Um,
Hence, I said that.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And looking at communication styles, our title for today is Echoes of the Soul, and the Enneagram's voice within. With any modality, with any kind of way of looking at ourselves, there are differences in our experience. Um, how would you distinguish between these types, or is there a difference in the voice that we have within that our style kind of leads with?
Definitely.
Mm,
Yeah. This is a really, really great topic from an Enneagram perspective because, in fact, all my leadership programs, I talk about the little voice.
yeah,
And
yeah.
each Enneagram type has a different, I would say, flavor, if you like, to their little voice.
Right.
And in Enneagram language, the conventional Enneagram language, this is often referred to as your mental fixation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so each Enneagram type has this, what I call kind of mental addiction, mental fixation that we don't really know we have, this narrative, this little voice, this voice inside of us
Yeah.
that is, very different. And it comes from, I mean, it's all part of the coping strategy, but it's birthed from that shadow, that core belief, that inner, that that echo of the soul. I mean, I call it the shadow, but it
Yeah.
it really is a sort of echo in a chamber. That's the word coming up for me now, and it does give birth to our superpower, and it all sits on a conundrum. But that little voice is often the thing that I, when I'm training and teaching,
Mm.
is to first say to people, can you become aware of your little voice? For
Mm.
example, in the four's case of melancholy,
Mm.
and ask her why she's there.
Yeah.
Because she's not good or bad, right or wrong, but she has a role and she's there for a reason and she's there saying stuff and she's part of the addiction. That little voice is
Yeah.
definitely part of the addiction of type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of the core of the being, because um if I kind of go back, I think we mentioned it before, that the type comes from the wounding, or the reaction to the wounding.
Yeah, that's right. So the type is a coping strategy
Mm.
for the wounding. And what we mean by the wounding is, for those of you listening, is in our early holding environment, that childhood environment, we are obviously very influenced by parents or primary caregivers, siblings, religious leaders, teachers, grandparents, all that, the community, etc. And through no fault of their own, and it's just the
Yeah.
story, and we're not going to blame anybody or whatever, but we have an experience that I refer to, and it's probably one that we don't even remember, that I often refer to as our first crack.
Okay.
And that first crack is the ego then goes, whoa, I have to cope. And I mean, there's lots of different theories, and I don't really want to waste time on all that stuff, but why that number? And the best that I've come up with by way of a metaphor is just kind of going, it's like playing roulette. You land on a number, and
Yeah.
in the Enneagram types case, certainly from a neurobiological point of view, we then what fires together wires together, and then the information goes and it gets better and faster, and then that's the habit. And so to your question, I often say your Enneagram type is absolutely not who you are. It's your coping strategy. And that's also why I prefer the Enneagram to all the other typologies. And in fact, if you call it a typology, you don't really understand the Enneagram, because the whole point of learning it, and when you really learn it, is you realize that actually who you really are is much more in line with your security point, which in your case is the one.
Yeah. Which is
And so
that
we
organizing.
yeah, the organizer, but also the person who's righteous and pragmatic, and actually that's what the 4 struggles to be.
Yeah.
Because that's who you really are.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so much there. I mean, to just know that we don't change that type though. So listening to that or being aware of it doesn't mean that we step out of it. It's more just connecting with where, that little niggly noise in the back that's in the 4's case melancholy, or in the 7's case, what would that be?
In the 7's case, it's called rationalization.
Okay.
And I can talk from my own experience that it's very difficult for me to discern, even now, when I am rationalizing. I've given her a name to raise my awareness around her, and I have latterly, probably in the last 5 years, worked on feeling, because I battle to feel as a 7 in my body, but feeling what that feels like for me to rationalize. And in essence, it just means that the 7 justifies their behavior. So for the 1, it's judgment and criticism. And the person
of self or of others or of anything.
The person they do criticize and judge others and things and situations, but 10 times more themselves, especially in the self-praise instinct. And then the 2's is flattery, which is, it's flattering themselves unconsciously that I'm the one that can help you. I'm the strong one. I'm the go-to girl. I'm the one that's got your number.
Yeah.
So that's what we mean by flattery. And again, I say this with total compassion for everyone and no judgment. Because firstly, it's totally unconscious. And secondly, it's to do with what we unconsciously perceive is necessary to be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, it isn't anything but a thing. There is no good or bad in it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, sometimes, exactly. So for the 3, it's called vanity, which again has got nothing to do with conceit. 3's are not conceited people. In fact, often they're quite insecure people, even though they're so amazing and competent and everything. But this vanity is the pressure that they put on themselves to make it happen. So I can
I'm good enough. I am worthy.
I'm the best. Not am I good, I'm the flipping best, man. That's the 3's. But it's not necessarily how they feel, which is why we then say the passion is deceit. So I'm the best, but I feel like a bit of a fraud. But the little voice will tell me that. Do you see? So that's why, if I bring it back to the topic, I mean, it can echo in their soul then that they don't feel good. They feel kind of embarrassed and ashamed because they don't feel that the image they're putting out is exactly what they feel. Until, of course, they do the work and they realize this and they re-engineer the pattern and all of that. And then the 5 is called stinginess. And it's definitely nothing to do with material. It's not that 5's are materially. It's to do with limiting the expulsion of their own energy.
So it's a withdrawal. It's I'm holding on.
Yes, and it's not even, yes, it can be a withdrawal, but it's also a boundary. They can be so boundary, because if I give too much away, I'll be depleted. And what's really important for 5's is that they are self-sufficient.
Yeah, independent.
Because of their wounding.
Mm.
And that's why I teach the woundings. My friend always says, I go where angels fear to tread. But the reason for that,
Yeah.
because I think it's the only way for us to truly understand with compassion
Mm.
why people behave the way they do.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's that yin and yang. You can't see the light without the dark. And for me, there's so much in the shadow, or the
Yes.
wounding. Yeah.
The shadow is totally our gift.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet we condition to remove ourselves from the shadow instead of embrace, unless we look at
No.
your work and realize that it's actually such an integral part of the psyche, is that
Yes.
shadow
Like,
and ego.
like seasons, like everything. We live in a dichotomy, we live in a paradoxical world.
Exactly.
And I often in my programs I'll talk about toxic positivity, which is very ironic considered the seven is considered the optimist, but endless positivity can be toxic.
Mm.
It's
Well, it's not realistic, is it? It's not the world
no,
that we live in. It's not
it's
real.
fake. Well,
Yeah.
it's never mind the world we live in, even within ourselves.
Yeah.
To experience a bad day gives birth to, the relief. To
Yeah.
be, I go back to Dr. David Hawkins' work, the
Yeah.
scale of consciousness, that baseline and below versus above, we
Mm.
vacillate, and I mean it is just the way it is.
Exactly. As below, as above, below, as below,
Yeah.
below. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so the six. So we've got this five on stinginess.
So then the six is called cowardice. And
Uh,
this certainly doesn't mean that the six is a coward. What it really refers to is that they think of the worst case scenario very quickly, and they can sort of like imagine things bigger than they are. I often use the example, if a six has a tiny scratch on their wrist, they think by the end of the night that it's cancer. Do you know what I mean? And they're definitely going to die somehow.
yeah.
So that's what we mean by cowardice,
Yeah.
which gives birth to magnificent courage and strength in the healthy
Yeah.
version. And then the seven we've done, the eight is vengeance.
Oh, interesting.
So this can be anything from I'll get you back, I'm going to teach you a lesson, to I'm really going to hurt you. Like,
Mm.
and it's because of that absolute wounding around betrayal.
Mm.
I mean, this is eight. Oh, this is why I feel for eights, because they would never not have your back.
Mm.
And it echoes in their soul that I did this for you. I loved you. It's almost a naivety. I always think eights have such purity in them until they get hurt. And the
And
reason
yeah.
they're so angry about betrayal is because they were naive
Yeah.
when they work so hard at not being. So
Mm.
when I use words like vengeance, I really hope that people hear that with compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a protection, though, isn't it? It's a
totally.
mask. It's a way for me to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll show you because you hurt me. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the nine is called sloth. And please, for those of you listening, this does not mean that the nine is lazy. No.
Mm.
What it refers to is oh, sorry. It's not sloth. Sorry, that's the passion. It is apathy. Sorry, it is apathy.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is, it doesn't matter. I'll let it slide. It's
Mm.
okay. I don't matter. And you'll often hear nines saying things like that. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Which it's not, because they're so sensitive and say so. It's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And also, it's an avoidance tactic.
Mm.
I avoid my own hurt. I avoid my own pain. I avoid my own conflict, etc., etc. And so it's it's a self-avoidance tactic. It's yeah. And of course, all these little voices are in essence getting us what we don't want. They're keeping us in that trap. They're affirming that core belief because, the core belief of 9 is it's not okay to be too assertive. And what that refers to is assertive with myself.
Mm.
And then apathy supports that. And then nines go, well, am I respected? And respect is a trigger, and off we go until we can get out of it, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
echoes, like, wow,
Echoes.
we are aware of
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm very happy to see Ansha has joined us.
yeah,
Ansha says, as above, below is used in Hermetic witchcraft. Yes, and a lot of other places, which I really love that kind of division of the tree, especially where it kind of reflects. Um, he says that he's an Enneagram 8 wing 5.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm so happy. Thank you, Ansha, for being here. And the 8 can't have a 5 wing. The 8 has a line to 5. So the 8 stress point is 5. This is when an 8 has been hurt, or when they've lost control or lost power or vitality or whatever, they tend to retreat into their mind. And this
Mm,
is where they plot the vengeance. And they put the person that hurt them under surveillance. They
mm,
gather lots. This is when an 8, and the self-preservation 8 can look like a 5 because
mm,
they're a little bit more anxious, like all self-praise dominant types, and
mm,
they're a little bit more withdrawn, and they can be more cerebral, more cautious, more stand back. So yeah, so the self-praise.
mm,
Okay, and yeah, that's interesting, Ansha. Autism, whilst we can't, autism as an energy is 5.
mm,
So if you are an 8, there would be a sort of overlay. And I'm not saying that all autistic people are 5s or all 5s are autistic, not at all. But like the energy of bipolar is 4 because of the up and down, and the energy of ADHD is 7 because of it, that withdrawal and that social difficulty and all of that. That's why we call it the energy of. And definitely, Ansha, thank you for that. Neurodiversity would have a sort of overlay, if you like, on the type. Yeah.
in the language of the Enneagram, or in the I don't know what the right word is there, but wings would be on either side of the main type,
Yeah.
and then you would have lines. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So
um,
the 8 would have either a 7 wing or a 9 wing.
and the
Or
5
both.
of 4 or a 6.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a difference in the subtypes when we have the voices? Or is
Yeah.
there an energy around that aspect of that inner voice?
Definitely. The self praise inner voice would be more anxious, it would be more resources driven, it would be more self referencing. That voice is all about me surviving in the world,
Mm,
regardless of the type.
mm,
And I think I might have mentioned the 3, 4, and 2 are the counter types because that sort of me referencing and like a little bit more anxiety and all of that is counter to the
yeah,
strategy of those 3
yeah.
types. The social is more of a sort of us together energy, and how do we all connect. This is about participation and belonging, and relationships, and others, and regardless of time.
And
So
it's me in the group, not as part of the group, not me on
that,
my own.
yeah, oh,
Yeah,
definitely. So these are, it's very much me, we referencing, etc.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so I always think of the self praise as a fairly contained energy, whereas
Mm,
the social is a kind of warm, enveloping energy. And again, it will differ slightly according to the type because they
yeah,
blend together. Whereas the sexual energy is more about sort of charisma and one-on-one and that hot stuff, and the attention is more attraction, and getting that attraction
mm,
and being attractive and deepening relationships, and
mm,
that. So it's got a very different voice and a very different echoing around the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to refer you to Ansho. I think autism represents an outlier for the Enneagram system simply because our etiology manifests outwardly as character traits.
Sure, that's a really, really interesting comment.
Mm.
Yeah, perhaps I'd have to give that some thought. I think that's a very, I've never, in all my 20 years, I've never heard that before. So thank you. Gosh, it's not often that I've never heard something before these days. So that's cool.
Uh,
Um, I'm not sure I agree with you, but I will have to give it some thought. Yeah.
mm,
Despite not being intrinsic to nature. Yeah, so I mean, I think what plays a big part in the development of type is certainly it's been very helpful for me is the understanding of epigenetics and
mm,
understanding that we are a combination of nature and nurture. And
mm,
so I think that's another thing, which is why I often talk about religious overlays, cultural overlays, gender overlays, racial, and in, you know, there's lots of overlays that
yeah,
we can talk about. Yeah.
yeah,
And again, you can slice and dice human beings, generational overlays. I mean, you can slice and
mm,
dice human beings in many ways. Yeah.
yeah. And
But
it is a tool for awareness as well. As you
yeah,
say, it's not a typology; it's a code, and there are different aspects to that code, which doesn't just lie in a number.
yeah, big time. Because of course, if we just take the eight as an example, if that's Ansha's lead type, is the sexual eight, the social eight, and the self-preservation eight looked like completely different humans. You'd never
Yeah,
think they were all eights, and that's pretty much true of the four as well, and
yeah,
any type. So I think that why I'm kind of going to have to give Ansha's comment some thought is that it's not about behavior. It's
yeah,
really not about behavior. It's about what drives that behavior.
yeah.
Yeah,
Which
so
is
I
very
agree with you.
different from a personality type or typology in any way. It's not a personality. It is how we, how our energy manifests in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's beautifully put. I love that, how our energy manifests. It's a lot to do with how we interpret and express.
yeah,
That's really what it is. And I love what Ansha said here about colloquially we define as personality. And yes, and I think that's a kind of a lazy way, not that Ansha's doing this, but when we sort of bracket people and blanket them into a personality. And that's the total opposite of what the Enneagram seeks to do.
yeah, yeah.
We often say in the narrative, particularly, we often say, like, here's the map, hold it
Mm,
like and see
yeah,
where you are because we're organic, we change. And I think this is where skeptics of the Enneagram come in because they kind of go, well, how do we define it? And there's all these lines and wings, and but
yeah,
but
yeah.
it really does make sense. So the muddling of personality traits versus symptoms can create strange psychometric results. I totally agree with you, Ansha.
I think he's
Yeah.
doing this on purpose though, because he knows how much I dislike the MBTI. So we're not going to go there.
Well, I was
Um,
about to say, please don't mention the war because I think MBTI is a
yeah,
redundant system. And one of the reasons I
yeah,
think it's redundant is because, as sociologists, we believe that all humans are ambiverts. We're not, and that's where the subtypes are helpful
exactly.
because, yeah,
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 and the lines, and I think there's so much that I didn't even know about, which also plays a part. And yes, it's instigated. I know.
yeah.
um, Saffron and Anshar, thank you so much. That was a lovely
Me too.
conversation, as always.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to learn more, Saffron is the place, the person
Mhm.
to go. I'll pop her website on here quickly, and she's created a beautiful introduction to the Enneagram course, which is available on the Wisdom Tree, which you can find here, and I'll put in the comments as well. Thank you, Saffron. I really
Thank you.
appreciate your insights and energy,
Yeah.
and we will see each other soon.
See you soon.
See
Thank
you
you.
soon.
Bye
Bye.
bye.